Welcome to the Photoshop demo, day 1, Computer Art, Blaine High School. First thing you want to do is open Photoshop. You'll see that the interface has come in, and what you want to do is you want to open a new file. This is the kind of document window. You're going to make a few choices here. So we can have a default Photoshop size, a US paper size, or some other choices. Basically, we're going to be dealing with US paper. Inside of US paper, we're dealing with legal, tabloid, or letter size. Letter size is a basic piece of computer paper. It's 8.5 by 11 at 300 dpi. The color mode is RGB. So what you want to do is you want to keep that RGB. You don't want to have a color mode that's different from that. We're not dealing with anything having to do with a printer. So what you would want to do is keep it in RGB color. There are a few more choices that you can open. One is bitmap. That is a 1-bit image used for gaming. Grayscale, RGB, CMYK, that's a printer color, and then lab color. Lab color is for someone who wants to match up a monitor color profile thousands of miles away. You also have bit resolution, like we talked about in the digital imaging. You can have 8-bit, 16-bit, or 32-bit. The only time that the 1-bit ghosted out piece gets lit up is if you're in bitmap. I usually just close the advanced panel, and I keep the background content as white. Go ahead and click OK. You'll also note that the image size is 24.1 megabytes. You can change this now by changing the resolution, or you can just click OK. Now we have the interface. This is the basic document interface. At the top you'll have a title. It says Untitled 1, and then we have an at, and this currently says at 25%. It also says that we're in RGB mode, and we're in 8-bit resolution. You can also see the size down at the bottom of the document. It says the actual image size, so it's 24.1 megabytes, and the percentage. I have just enlarged it to 100%. 100% is actual size. If your image is not reading 100%, you're looking at it either zoomed in or zoomed out. This is a toolbar, and we're going to be talking about the toolbar for the next few minutes. We also have the color palette, the adjustments palette, and the layers palette that's very similar to Illustrator. I'm just going to close that document and not save it. I'm actually going to open one of my images from the desktop. I'm going to open this tree image. Click on it and open it. So we're going to start with the top of the tools palette. The very top tool is the Move tool. We're really not going to see much unless we use the second tool down, which is the Selection tool. And what we can do is we can draw a selection in a box. There are other kinds of selection tools. There's a rectangular marquee tool, an ellipse, and a row and a column. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. These are only selection tools. Once you have that selection tool selected, go up to your project and actually select a box on your image. Next, we're going to move to the Move tool, and then we're going to just take that and move it off. So it's, in essence, taking a slice out of our project. I'm going to put that back carefully, and if I don't get it back exactly, I'm going to hit Command-Z and undo. The next tool down is called the Lasso tool. The Lasso tool is going to give you the ability to freeform select something and do the exact same thing. So what I'll do is I'll move this off as well. And then I'll try and put it back, but I usually just hit Command-Z. The great thing about undo is you can just easily hit Command-Z on your keyboard. Unlike Illustrator, it is not easy to step back multiple steps without hitting Command Option Z. So get used to doing that. Now, what I'm doing is I'm going to the magnetic lasso tool. What the magnetic lasso tool is going to do, which is actually located under the lasso tool. Remember, just like Illustrator, any of the tools on the toolbar that have a black arrow in the corner mean that they have hidden tools underneath. So what I'm going to do next is I'm very carefully going to sort of slide my magnetic lasso tool, and you see me doing that now, along the edge of this tree. And what it's going to do is it's actually going to snap to that point. Sometimes it's a little arbitrary, or it just does what it wants to do. Generally, you do have to go back to the original point in which to get it to select. So now I'll zoom in so you can see it a little bit better. How did I get that off? What I did is I took my rectangular marquee tool, chose that, and then just went in and clicked anywhere. So now you'll see that I'm going around an area that I want, and that lasso is actually sticking to the edge. I won't do too much. We also have the polygonal lasso tool. I don't use either of the lasso or the polygonal lasso tool too much. I just prefer the magnetic lasso. The next one down is the quick selection tool. This is just going to paint in an area that you want to select. Again, these top 4 tools are basically selection tools. To get that to come off, remember, just go back to the default, which is the square rectangular marquee tool, and click anywhere. Now we're going to talk about the magic wand. Magic wand actually likes to do sometimes what it wants. It actually picks up pixels of the same color, and so sometimes it will pick up things that you don't really want. Notice here that it only picked up a section of the river in the back. The next tool that we're going to cover is the crop tool. So I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so that you can see what I'm actually doing. So this would be a great, this is a great tool to get rid of things that you don't want. So you're going to take it out and draw a box, and you can either go up to the image window and hit crop, or my personal favorite is just double click inside of the box. What it then does is it throws away everything on the outside and keeps everything on the inside. To undo that, you have to hit undo. Also underneath that tool is something called the slice tool and the slice selection tool. Both of these tools are pretty much dead tools to us. What they do is they actually put or give you the ability to put individual links on sections of a picture. We're not going to use it. The next tool down is the eyedropper, and notice that it has this cool kind of round circle. The color of the pixel that's getting picked up is on the top, and the one that we had in our color palette last is on the bottom, so you can tell what the difference is. It's going to show up down at the bottom of your toolbar in your color picker area. Also underneath this tool is something called the color sampler tool, the ruler tool, the note tool, and the 1, 2, 3 count tool. Basically, the only thing that you need to know in here, and most of these tools are not going to be used by you. You might want the ruler tool. Basically, all it's going to do is give you the ability to measure items inside of your picture. It doesn't do anything to the picture except for measure the item. When you get rid of the ruler tool, it goes away. The next tool that I'm going to use is called the healing brush, and I'm going to zoom in onto the stick that I really just want to get rid of. It's kind of unsightly. So I'm going to click on the healing brush. It looks like a band-aid with a little patch in the back. What you can do with this is you could just paint right over the top of the area that you want to get rid of. So I'm going to do that now. Make sure that I'm on the healing spot healing brush, and then I just paint over the top, and it's gone. I'm going to undo that, and this time I'm going to go to the healing brush tool. Now, if I was just to click on top of what I wanted to change, I actually get this message that said we have to option click. So we're going to define a source point by holding the options key on our keyboard, which is the second key away from the space bar. So if we hold that down, and you can see me doing that now, you're going to get a target. The target is where you're going to take pixels from. So once you hold your target down and then click, you'll see that we're stealing pixels from a particular area. And you can see that by the plus that sort of happens at the same time that you are using it. The patch tool is something that we're not really going to use, and the red eye tool is something we're not going to use either. Both are commercial items for getting rid of dust and scratches, and for getting rid of red eye, which normally happens to humans when their retina flashes back in a dark room. Next is the brush tool, and we can change the color of our paintbrush to anything that we want. And right now my brush is pretty big, so we basically got a blob. I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to change my brush size. I like to change brush size up here at the top. I'm just going to make a smaller brush, and then you can test out your brushes. There's hundreds of brushes inside of Photoshop, and we'll kind of cover a lot more of that in the digital painting. The next one down is a pencil tool. That's pretty much a smaller brush. We also have the color replacement tool, and this one will start to make sort of a transparent area go over the top of what we already have. So it's going to show a little bit of the photo underneath. So sometimes you'll notice those websites where there's a shirt that's being advertised to purchase, and then you notice that you can change the color. That's all they did, was they used the color replacement tool to change that. And so they didn't have to reshoot the picture. Also, underneath the color replacement tool is the mixer brush. Now the mixer brush we're really going to start to use inside of our painting unit. What it is, and I'll zoom in a little bit, is it starts to take those pixels and blend them together. And although it doesn't look very good in digital imaging, it works really well in the painting section. I'll just undo that a little bit, get rid of that. I like to undo some of my tests, so we're back to the original image. Next up is the clone stamp. This is really truly the tool that most people buy Photoshop for and have for a long time. Again, you're going to need to use that option click, so you're going to need to hold the option key down, take and find a targeted area that you want to clone. So let's just make another one of these trees. The great thing about this is that if you clone stamp, you can actually take full pixels from any area. The spot healing brush and the healing brush really take a kind of a ghosted version, so it's good for retouching, but not great for making major changes. Notice that I made, pretty much another tree here, and I could continue to do that, but I made a small mistake and took a little bit of the water here. So now we've seen the clone stamp. There's also something called the clone pattern stamp. What this does is it sort of puts this pattern over the top of your project in a clone way. The tool has a little checkerboard behind it. Just make sure that you're in the one that doesn't have that. I don't use the clone pattern stamp very much. Just know that everybody who owns Photoshop does have this particular tool, and so therefore retouching and major changes to food or models or hair or anything will happen. So I did clone this tree, and the next tool is going to be our history brush. So let's say you have an image that you don't really like just a section of where you cloned, but you don't want to erase the whole thing. This is the history brush. So what this does is it just erases the last thing that you did. So this is what I did last. So I can just put a stump here if I want. And you notice that I got rid of that little blemish on my tree. Underneath that is the art history brush, and the art history brush is basically going to start to make your image start to look like an impressionist painting. Whether it is Monet, like the one that we just looked at, a Van Gogh, a thinner Monet, or more of a pointillist type image, or curved Van Gogh strokes. All of these definitely give a technique to the image. Some really don't retain much of the image, and that is the art history brush. So the history brush gets rid of the last thing that you did. The art history brush puts on a an artistic slant. The eraser, which I just used, is an eraser that just erases to whatever the background color is. So I've changed the background color now to black. So even though the eraser you would think that it was supposed to be white, it's really not. What I would use if I wanted to do any major erasing is I would use what we call the background eraser. So let's say you want to do some compositing, which we can do at a later tutorial. To composite, you would really need to get rid of a section of your image, and this would be a great way to do it. You notice that we get a black and white checkerboard pattern. That means that we're erasing to transparent, and I like to up the background eraser to 100%, so it really does get rid of the background. This is not my favorite tool, however. The one underneath the background eraser, the magic eraser, really gets rid of large sections without too much hassle. So if you're looking to get rid of a background really easy, this is a great way to do it. So this is the end of part 1. I would suggest using the tools that you've learned so far on your current picture, and then move on to Photoshop tutorial day 2.